Hello, folks. Welcome. Welcome to everybody around the world. I am your host, the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. Thanks for being here. I guess it's, noon Eastern, and we got like 9 a.m. in Pacific time zone and 5 or 6 p.m. in Europe. So some of you have coffee in your mug, some of you have whiskey, but we're going to get through this. I got a lot to talk about. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Good to see you here. Please take a second to share this with friends and family, really enemies. I think you should share this mostly with enemies. Good morning, Robin. Thanks for being here. So as I did before, and I will be doing going forward, this will go out live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. But after 15 minutes, the rest will be just at rumble.com/LeeCamp. It's still free there, so I'm not putting it sneakily behind a paywall. Just run over to rumble.com/LeeCamp if you want to see the full 45-minute to an hour stream. And yeah, thanks for being here. I'll remind you of that again as we get closer to the 15-minute mark. But I want to get into how we've been proven right. It doesn't surprise me, but it might surprise some other people who, believe the garbage propaganda against us, against independent media, independent journalists, against left wingers, against comedians that are journalists as well. So, we've been proven right. How long? And for those of you who watch my stream regularly, how long have I and others, independent media, been saying this is a proxy war? The war on Ukraine, the war in Ukraine by Russia, it's a proxy war. It's between Russia and the United States. The United States has funded and armed Ukraine to the teeth. We helped create the 2014 Maidan coup. We funded and armed Nazis, et cetera, down the line. You can keep adding details on how the United States helped create this. That doesn't make it right. I don't support the invasion by Russia, but this is a proxy war. And now we have more and more of the mainstream admitting, including government officials, U.S. government officials, admitting this is a proxy war, and I'm going to get into to some of the details of that, to the proof of that in a second. But when do we get like the flowers in the mail? When do they come forward and say, oh my God, we were wrong? We spent all that time writing attack pieces in the Clinton machine Daily Beast articles and tweeting about how these guys were liars, and we spent all that time making sure RT America was shut down and that Lee Camp's podcast was deleted on Spotify and all this stuff. Well, now we want to say sorry because we've realized, oh, you were right. This is a fucking proxy war, like we've been saying since the beginning. And by we, there's not even that many people, right? I mean, you're talking a handful of independent journalists, a few comedians / journalists that were really saying it from day one. This is a proxy war. This is not Russia versus Ukraine. This is Russia versus the United States. And the United States is willing to fight this to the end of every Ukrainian. They are willing to fight Russia until every Ukrainian is dead. And that's the U.S. goal. I mean, the U.S. doesn't, they basically don't, the U.S. government doesn't care how many Ukrainians die as cannon fodder, whatever. They just want to, weaken Russia, which, now this part I already revealed to you in a previous episode, so I won't spend much time on this part, but I'm just laying it out there as the evidence that this is a proxy war, and it's now being admitted as a proxy war by the mainstream. But so this is what I already shared with you in a past episode. U.S. Secretary of Defense admits that the real strategic goal in Ukraine is to quagmire Russia, is to weaken Russia. The exact sentence that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said was, "We want to see Russia weakened," when he was asked what the goals were of this process of this fight, of the U.S. sending billions and billions of dollars of aid to Ukraine while they can't help Americans. While you see tent cities popping up all over America, we're sending billions and billions of dollars of aid, meaning mostly weapons, missiles to Ukraine to point at Russia. U.S. Secretary of Defense has said we want to see Russia weakened, meaning U.S. is fighting to harm Russia, not to protect Ukraine, not to try and, make sure that Ukrainians survive and that we see peace, but instead to fight this as long as possible. All right, so that one I already covered, so won't spend time on that one. But there's more evidence, some of it brought forward or at least collected together by journalist Kyjonka Johnstone. She does great work, and so a shout out to her. But this is on Fox News, one of our best lying media channels. Of all the lying full of shit media channels, my favorite is Fox News. This is so this is boy, how many times can I say this is? This is U.S. Senator Moulton, Democrat, because there's no real difference. Honestly, you shouldn't even say Democrat or Republican. Does it fucking matter? Just say the sociopath who runs our government. So, Congressman Moulton, and this is him on the always amazing Fox News. And Kyjonka Johnson is pointing out that it's funny how it used to be just a few weeks ago, it was Kremlin propaganda to say it was a proxy war, right? We were Putin apologists if we said it was a proxy war. We were lying on behalf of Russia if we said it was a proxy war. We were pieces of shit who were doing Russia's bidding if we said it was a proxy war. And now, what do you know? U.S. Defense Secretary, members of Congress, and mainstream media outlets saying, oh, it's a proxy war, meaning we were right all the fucking time. Because honestly, we're always right. I mean, those of us who do real independent journalism seem to be right, 90, 99% of the time. All right, let's see. There's 13 steps, by the way, to make these videos large screen with the audio shared with it's obnoxious, but one second and we're gonna do it. I swear to God, it's happening, folks. It's happening.
If they wrap this in the Senate with a Ukraine funding and a COVID funding, you guys okay with that, Congressman Moulton?
Look, I'm going to support it because it's the right thing to do for Ukraine. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of politics involved, and there will be domestic debates here at home about other policies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we've got to realize we're at war. And we're not just at war to support the Ukrainians. We're fundamentally at war, although it's somewhat through a proxy, with Russia, and it's important that we win.
Did you hear that? We're at war with Russia, and it's important that we win. We, the United States, are at war with Russia, and it's important that we win. Meaning proxy war. He actually uses the word proxy, although he gets a little hesitant. He gets a little worried he might be revealing the truth, and he goes, somewhat through a proxy. Somewhat through a proxy. And by the way, just saying it's a proxy war is not just, it's not just, okay, well, it's a proxy war. It's a fucking war crime to have a proxy war. It is horrific to have a proxy war. It means allowing or pushing others to die and to have their society destroyed and their country fucking obliterated to fight our war so the United States can, win geopolitical power against Russia. It's not just a nice little statement. It's not just I saw someone and I thought they were a little rude. It's not like that kind of statement where it's like, okay, he felt they were a little rude. I'll write that down in my notepad of things I know. Saying something's a proxy war is saying you are allowing and pushing and making sure these citizens and civilians and people in Ukraine die for a war that is not their own. That's completely fucked. That is wildly fucked. Wildly fucked. And yet here it is being admitted by a Democrat congressperson on Fox News, admitting it's proxy war, admitting we're committing war crimes. Because if you're involved in a proxy war, you're involved in making sure others die to fight your war, that's a war criminal status right there. Not that we don't have a long list of reasons that we are war criminals, but I'm just saying this adds it. And he's admitting it. We're admitting it now. And we're admitting that people like me have been right all along. Fucking douchebag comedians with a webcam have been right all along. And have been censored for it, right? I've lost my TV show. All the old videos are banned on YouTube. Lost podcast. Shadow banned on Facebook. Suppressed on Twitter. And all that for saying things that are now being admitted to by our congresspeople on live television. Okay. Got that? Let's see if I can play the last few sentences of this one more time without too much trouble.
But at the end of the day, we've got to realize we're at war. And we're not just at war to support the Ukrainians. We're fundamentally at war, although it's somewhat through a proxy, with Russia. And it's important that we win.
Also, that last statement, it's important that we win. What does it look like for the U.S. to win a proxy war with Russia? We know that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia. Russia is, despite the fact that our military is, 100 times the size of theirs, not in terms of nuclear weapons, but in terms of other stuff, spending, etc. But Russia's still the fifth largest or something military in the world, or fourth, I don't know, and it dwarfs Ukraine in every respect. It dwarfs the Ukrainian military. So even the U.S. sending all these weapons, sending all these missiles and everything, they're not going to defeat Russia. So when he says it's important that we win, what that means is basically fighting to the last Ukrainian. It's the U.S. fighting endlessly, meaning sending missiles and everything else to Ukraine to fight Russia endlessly until Ukraine has been turned into an Afghanistan-style destroyed society where it's just war for years and years, and the people have suffered immensely. I mean, they already have suffered immensely. And yet here we are saying, no, it's important we keep going. It's important we keep this going. Let's not back off. Yeah, well, it's no skin off our teeth, right? We just send them a few missiles out of our $1 trillion a year military budget. That's pretty easy, right? Not a big deal for us. Meanwhile, all Ukrainians are being killed. Their society is being destroyed. Again, you can also blame Russia for that, but I'm not a Russian in Russia. I'm an American in America telling you that this is fucked up what we're doing. Now, for a Russian in Russia, maybe I'd be like, hey, it's fucked up, Putin, that you're bombing these people in Ukraine. But I feel like you get that story plenty in your mainstream media. What you don't get is how fucked up the United States behavior is right now. All right. So now we have two pieces. Those are two pieces of evidence that they're now admitting this is a proxy war. Another piece is that I've mentioned before is that Biden, in his speech, he ad-libbed the final line where he said, good God, Putin cannot stay as president of Russia, which it was a speech on Ukraine and what's going on there. And he says Putin has to be, he basically called for regime change in Russia, which is one thing for someone else to call for regime change in Russia. When the U.S. president says one of our aims in this conflict is to bring down Putin in Russia, again, you're saying it's a proxy war. You're saying our actual aims are not peace and sovereignty of Ukraine. Our actual aims are to harm and create regime change in Russia, which is definition of proxy war. All right, so here's one more piece of evidence that they're not that this is a proxy war. I think hopefully if you're watching this, you know this is a proxy war. But here's another piece of evidence that the mainstream is now admitting it. This is now acceptable to admit. I mean, it's breathtaking that these sociopaths now find it acceptable to just admit their sociopathy in public. I mean, truly incredible. It's like I did a video a few weeks back on how the Biden administration was now admitting, and the Biden administration was and other government agencies were now admitting that the intelligence they had on what was going on in Ukraine was often not reliable, and yet they would tell people it was reliable. So they were admitting that they were lying, because if it's not reliable, then you don't have any facts to back it up. So the U.S. administration was admitting that they're basically making shit up and telling mainstream media outlets it's true. And then again, I get censored. People get their YouTube accounts taken away for saying, hey, they're making this shit up. What's going on in Ukraine? And yet now they admit it. So it seems to be a theme that these sociopaths are now admitting to their crimes, to their dastardly deeds, to the various things they do with their fingers tented together like this. They're now admitting to a lot of that, and it could be that they just control the system so much that it doesn't bug them, it doesn't bother them anymore. They don't care that we find out these things, because they don't have to admit them. So I don't. It's almost sad to see, but at least I and others who speak the truth can point to it and say, hey, no, they admitted this shit. There it is, right there. All right, so here's another example of mainstream media now deciding it's acceptable to say this is a proxy war. We are killing Ukrainians to further American hegemony, to further American power, to further America's ability to keep down other powers, such as Russia, and to stop them economically. All right, so this one also was tweeted out by Caitlin Johnstone. This is the New Yorker, very mainstream outlet, right? You don't get much more mainstream than the New Yorker. And they said, in just 9 weeks, the conflict has rapidly evolved into a full proxy war with Russia, with global ramifications. So now they're slightly equivocating. They don't want to say it started as a proxy war. You and I know, if you have half a brain, that this was proxy war from day one, because the U.S. did everything they could to help foster a situation that would end up like this. They created the 2014 Maidan coup. They funded and backed Nazis. They funded and backed the Nazis that were killing thousands, 15,000 in the Donbass region over the past 8 years since 2014. They have told Ukraine to continue this. You've seen fights in the media and the news and stuff about sending more Javelin missiles to Ukraine way before this invasion broke out, right? Because you remember it was a big deal that Trump wasn't sending those Javelin missiles to Ukraine, and asked Ukraine to do an investigation of Hunter Biden in order to get those those Javelin missiles. And our Congress, that was his first impeachment, right? Because Trump has been impeached twice, because impeached just means they brought charges. It doesn't mean you were booted out of office. And the first one had to do with this. It had to do with the fact that he wouldn't send, and Trump's a piece of shit. For those of you who might be new to my stuff, I do not further any kind of love of Trump. Trump is a phenomenal piece of garbage, human garbage. But sometimes he would do the right things for his own means, for his own reasons, for his own ego, such as trying to create peace with North Korea. Another thing he did, which was the right thing, but for all the wrong reasons, was he held up the shipment of Javelin missiles to Ukraine because he wanted them to investigate Hunter Biden. Turns out, by the way, that everything he was saying about Hunter Biden, well, I think he also wanted them to investigate something about servers and voting servers or whatever, which I think I only vaguely remember it, but I'm pretty sure that was utter horseshit. But the Hunter Biden thing, yeah, it was true. Hunter Biden was on the oil board of Burisma in Ukraine getting $50,000 a month. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. But yeah, I've talked about that too many times before. However, the point is, we've been shipping Javelin missiles to Ukraine for fucking years. Years. Our Congress withdrew a ban on funding Nazis in like 2013, 2014, so that they could fund the Azov battalion in Ukraine. Anyway, New Yorker doesn't want you to know about all that. They want you to think that this is the part that's propaganda. They want you to think this has evolved into a proxy war. It just became a proxy war. It was we had nothing to do with it. And then we were, I mean, if you're going to do an impersonation of the U.S. government, I feel like you should be pretty fucking drunk, right? We had nothing to do with it. And then they just started fighting. And so we sent them a lot of stuff because we like them. They're good guys. And then Zelensky had a funny TV show. He was a comedian that did funny shows. So we just take missiles and you do whatever you want with the missiles. But it turns out that Russia didn't like that. So now it's a proxy war. Also, I feel like that's probably how Joe Biden sounds right now with all the prescription drugs he's on. But despite that little bit of propaganda, the fact that they say it's evolved into a proxy war, still, this is a big step. The mainstream media, the mainest of streamiest media, the New Yorker, is admitting this is now a proxy war. Again, that's not like an okay thing to say. That's not like, oh, yeah, it's just a proxy war. No, that's like fucking war crime level horrific. It's a proxy war. We are killing, and I know I'm repeating myself, but this is fucking important. We are allowing to be killed and helping to be killed millions, if the numbers ever get to that high. But all right, we'll start with thousands of Ukrainians, because we're fighting Russia in a proxy war that, as a Democratic congressman just said on Fox News, we have to win. We have to win by allowing every Ukrainian to die. So there's piece of proof number 3, 4, that the mainstream is now admitting this is a proxy war. So now I want to show you, this is Boris Johnson, who, as you know, is one of our allies. He does this shit for us, right? The UK is part of all of our insane schemes. They're the ones imprisoning and torturing Julian Assange for the past 10 years at our bidding. So UK, I mean, you can basically look at the UK as a little puppet of the United States. They run around and do what we tell them. So whenever you see something like this, at least in a foreign policy sense, maybe not in a domestic policy UK sense, but foreign policy, it's basically coming from the United States. So here is Boris Johnson he went to Ukraine and he met with Zelensky. And now a Ukrainian paper and others with knowledge are saying that Boris Johnson pressured Zelensky to ditch peace talks with Russia, which is exactly what the United States wants, right? If you look, here's a question. If you're arguing with someone about this and they say, oh, no, the U.S. just wants peace, ask them this. How much have you heard our politicians, and really our media as well, but especially our politicians, talk about peace talks and ending this with peace? They don't. They essentially don't. If they do, it's a little throwaway, like Biden, if he gave an hour speech, probably said the word peace twice or something. But so it's a little throwaway. But for the most part, almost never mentioned, because the U.S. doesn't care for peace. There's no search for peace. They're not looking under the couch cushions for peace right now. All right. They're not really pushing it to try and find peace. They have no interest in peace. They have interest in an extended proxy war that is a quagmire for Russia. So here is more proof that that's what's being done. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because we live in a dystopian, bizarro world in which fucking idiot clowns become the heads of state. Zelensky is a case in point in Ukraine. He was a ridiculous comedian before, and now he's head of Ukraine. And Boris Johnson was a clown before he became prime minister. So, but Boris Johnson pressured Zelensky to ditch the peace talks. I mean, could you imagine being that insane? So this is a quote from the Ukrainian news outlet Ukrainska Pravda, and they say the British government has become an obstacle to peace in Ukraine. The conflict there is developing into a proxy war between Russia and NATO, and it is the Ukrainian people who will suffer the consequences. So citing unnamed sources from Zelensky's inner circle and advisory team, they reported that Johnson brought the messages to Kyiv, to Zelensky, that Putin should only be pressured. He should not be negotiated with. So never negotiate with him. Never sit down and end this thing. And also that if Ukraine was ready to sign some agreements that would end it, Putin wouldn't abide by it or something. He will screw everyone over. So Johnson ran over there. Boris Johnson ran to Ukraine, really on behalf of the United States, and said, don't sit down for peace talks. Don't try and solve this. And no matter what peace talks even came out of it, they don't matter anyway, because Putin's not going to abide by them, which evidence has shown to the contrary. But either way, this is the UK on behalf of the United States running to Ukraine to try and make sure peace talks don't happen, and that the ones that have happened, the talks that have happened, fail. I mean, how much more evidence do you need that the U.S. does not want this to end? The U.S., UK, NATO alliance, they do not want it to end. I mean, some of the NATO countries got dragged into this, but NATO does what the U.S. wants. UK does what the U.S. wants. So this is the U.S.-led shit show on that side of things. Yes, Russia is responsible for their own actions, but the UK's just doing America's bidding. And here you have that Boris Johnson ran over there to say, don't meet with Putin because it won't solve anything, and even if you did, it wouldn't matter. I mean, it's insane. Like, it's utter insanity. It's true sociopathy as people are dying to act like this is okay, and that this isn't any mainstream media news. This does not get mentioned almost at all. That's another factor of all this. Everything I'm saying, like, you can grab these blips, like the New Yorker calling it a proxy war, or the Congressman Malton saying it's a proxy war, but those blips should be covered the way I'm covering them right now. Spend a half hour on them, CNN. The fact that this is now being acceptably called a proxy war. Because if it's a proxy war, then why are the talks? Why is everyone not running around going, oh my God, the U.S. is fighting Russia? Because that's the reality. We're fighting Russia. We're just letting the Ukrainians die in the fight. You know, it's not these politicians' kids that are fighting over there, is it? They wouldn't even be fighting if the U.S. were at war. You don't send the politicians' kids. You send the poor people. All wars are poor, are rich man's wars with the poor fighting them. That's what it is. And actually, that's what Eugene Debs said during World War I. And sorry, I've got a rogue mustache hair. makes my nose itch. In order to have like the real, like, fucking hardcore mustache where it's like perfect and every hair just always abides by the rules and everything, the amount of time you got to put into that is not something I'm like down with. It's, you got to buy all sorts of greases and balms, and there's various buckets of Vaseline consistency stuff that you got to put on there. You got to sit there in the mirror for like a half hour every morning, just coaching the hairs, just like, come on, buddies, we're all in this together. We're all going one direction. It's a whole fucking system, man. You got to devote your life to that. So anytime you see someone with like the fucking perfectly coiffed every hair, not one rogue hair, trying to do his own thing, if you see that, then just know that's a person who spends a half hour in the mirror minimum every morning with creams and lathers and razors and scissors and tiny combs that are like the size of a toothpick, and it's a whole situation. So just know that about them. I'm not saying you got to make fun of their mustache. You know, let them have their thing. But we all have our thing. But let them have their thing. But just know that's the type of person you're dealing with, is someone who has that kind of time and wants to spend that much time on every last hair doing what it's told. Because I don't know about you, but, you know, I've gone against the grain, which now makes me the most censored comedian in America. And my facial hair is the same way. There's going to be a few of them that are like, fuck the man. And they just go crazy. And unfortunately, that doesn't result in anything cool. It just results in me having an itchy nose sometimes. So I don't think that rogue hair really gets what he wants out of it, but whatever. Anyway, I think that tangent was probably the most important thing I've said so far today. But speaking of wild hair, you got Boris Johnson on the screen right now. Now he's kind of the reverse. And, you know, you could argue there's some of this with Bernie Sanders too, but Boris Johnson wants to look like he has rogue hair because he's trying to make people think he's like one of these intellectuals who like an Einstein or something, who actually works so hard that he doesn't have any time to deal with hair. He doesn't know what it's doing or where it's going. It's just not on his radar. He wants people to think, and that's not true. He's a fucking idiot who thought it'd be, you know, look good, look wild and fun to have this ridiculous hair going every direction. And then really, I think he was modeling it after Jimmy Savile, the pedophile, the UK pedophile. I think he saw that guy had wild, ridiculous blonde hair, and he was like, you know what? That pedophile style is like fucking legit. So I'm going to try and maybe, you know, go with that, go with the pedophile hair. And anyway, that's what Boris Johnson is going on. Bernie Sanders, I don't know what Bernie's deal is. I think he probably is closer to the guy who works so hard that he doesn't have time to think about the hair. Maybe, could be, you know, like the Doc Brown in Back to the Future. Right, the hair's going everywhere because they're working too hard. Now, that being said, Bernie did sell everybody out by endorsing Hillary Clinton, but we don't need to get into that right now. I don't know what his hair had to say about that. I really don't. Anyway, and by the way, someone was asking, because whenever I close out the other screens, it shows the photo of me, which is the placeholder image on the StreamYard account. But someone the other day took a freeze frame of it and asked whether my home screen was a photo of me, whether my wallpaper was a photo of me, which no, it's not. I'll have you know, it is not me just sitting there like, hey. But anyway, it's a nude photo of, you know, I don't want to get it. It's Jimmy Carter. I don't really get into it, but it's. No, I'm kidding. It's not Jimmy Carter. I don't know. I needed to find something funny. It's B. Arthur. It's a nude photo of B. Arthur that's my home screen. So I want to do, oh my God, I forgot to close out the other two streams. All right, we're running a little late on that aspect of it, I guess, but I get too into these things. All right, so as I said, although I said it was going to be 15 minutes, it's been a half an hour. The Facebook and the YouTube streams are now ending, but this will all continue at rumble.com/LeeCamp. So for Facebook and YouTube, please join us over at rumble.com/LeeCamp. Because it will keep going there. So let's see. Let's do that real quick.